The city was loud, filled with smoke and strange lights. Ships flew over broken rooftops, and voices from 100 alien species mixed together in the air. It was not a place where humans liked to walk, yet one man walked there that night. His name was Daniel. He was a soldier once, but now he was only a traveler, looking for peace in a place where peace was rare. Daniel moved through the narrow market street. The ground was dirty, and the smell of oil and rotten food filled the air. Stalls sold strange fruit, broken machines, and weapons that glowed in the dark. Everyone was busy, shouting, trading, fighting. No one cared about the weak. But then Daniel stopped. In the corner, near the trash piles, he saw movement. At first he thought it was just a street dog. Something small, something hungry. But when he looked closer, his eyes widened. It was not a dog. It was a little girl. Her skin was blue, glowing softly under the neon light. Her hair was white, messy, and full of dust. She was thin, so thin that her bones showed under her skin. She crouched on the ground, her hands digging through scraps of food like an animal. The crowd around her walked past without looking. Some laughed, some pointed, but nobody helped. Daniel watched as she picked up a piece of bread that had fallen into the dirt. She smelled it, brushed it with her small fingers, then ate it fast like she was afraid someone would take it from her. Her big eyes darted left and right. Fear was everywhere in her face. Daniel's heart tightened. He had seen hungry children before in war, but something about this girl was different. She did not look like a beggar. She looked like someone lost, someone broken. Yet, in her eyes, there was something more, something noble. He took a step closer. The girl froze. She hugged the dirty bread to her chest, her small fingers shaking. Her lips trembled. She looked at him like he was a monster, like everyone else who had hurt her. Daniel slowly knelt down, lowering himself so his eyes were level with hers. He spoke softly, his voice calm. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The girl shook her head fast. She pressed her back against the wall, her little body trying to disappear. She looked ready to run, but her legs trembled too much. Daniel reached into his bag. He pulled out a sandwich, real food, fresh and warm. He unwrapped it slowly and placed it on the ground between them. The smell of cooked meat and bread filled the air. Her eyes widened. She stared at the sandwich, her lips parting slightly. Hunger burned in her face, but she did not move. She looked from the food to him, and back again. Her hands clenched tighter around the dirty bread she had found. Daniel pushed the sandwich a little closer. "It's yours," he whispered. Still, she did not move. She looked at him, testing him, waiting for the trick. She had learned to survive by not trusting anyone. Then her stomach growled. Her eyes closed for a moment, as if she hated herself for being hungry. Then, slowly, carefully, she reached out. Her fingers touched the bread of the sandwich. She pulled it back fast, expecting him to stop her. But Daniel didn't move. At last, she grabbed the sandwich with both hands. She took a small bite, then another. Then, like a storm breaking, she ate fast, tears running down her cheeks as the real taste of food filled her mouth. Daniel watched in silence. For the first time that day, the little alien girl was not alone. The crowd still passed by. Some aliens muttered. One laughed, pointing at Daniel. "Human feeds trash," the alien sneered. But Daniel ignored them. His eyes were only on the girl. When she finished half the sandwich, she stopped. She looked at him again, her eyes shining with water. She did not speak. She only stared, as if she was waiting to see if he would take it back. Daniel smiled softly. "Keep it. Eat." She blinked, then hugged the sandwich to her chest. For the first time, Daniel saw something change in her. The fear in her eyes did not vanish, but behind it he saw a spark of trust. And in that moment, he knew. This was not just some lost alien child eating scraps like a dog. This was someone important. someone worth saving. And Daniel was not going to walk away. The night grew colder. The market lights flickered as stalls closed one by one. The noise faded, but danger did not. In a city like this, silence meant hunters were awake. Daniel stayed near the girl. She sat with her back to the wall, clutching the half-eaten sandwich. Her eyes were still wide, watching him, not sure if she should trust him or run. He spoke again, his voice calm. "You don't need to hide from me." The girl didn't answer. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Daniel realized she might not even know his language well. Still, he tried. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She tilted her head. Her white hair fell across her face. For a long moment she was silent. Then, in a voice so small it was almost a whisper, she said, "Lyra." Daniel nodded. "Lyra," he repeated. The name felt like music. Strange, but beautiful. The girl looked down at the sandwich, then back at him. Her eyes were not just hungry. They were lonely. They were tired. Daniel looked around. Shadows moved in the distance. Too many eyes were watching them. The aliens in this part of the city had seen him give food to a child they despised. That was dangerous. Kindness here was weakness, and weakness was hunted. He leaned closer. "Come with me. You're not safe here." Lyra shook her head fast. Her small hands clutched the sandwich tighter. She pressed herself against the wall like a cornered animal. Daniel sighed. He had seen this before. In war zones and refugee camps. Children who had been betrayed too many times. They learned not to believe in promises. But he could not leave her here. Slowly, he reached out his hand. Not to grab her, not to force her, but simply to offer. "You have my word," he said gently. "I won't let anyone hurt you." For a long time she stared at his hand. Her blue skin looked even paler in the dim light. At last, her small fingers lifted. Shaking, unsure, she touched his palm. Daniel closed his hand around hers. Warm, strong, protective. "Good," he whispered. "Let's go." He led her through the narrow back streets, away from the main market. The air smelled of rust and smoke. Lyra followed close behind, her bare feet making no sound. She kept looking around like she expected someone to jump out at her. Daniel noticed scars on her arms and legs. Some were fresh, some old. Whoever she was, life had not been kind. They stopped at an abandoned workshop, its doors broken, its windows covered in dust. Inside it was dark but quiet. Safe, at least for the moment. Daniel found a small lamp in his pack and turned it on. The soft glow filled the room. Lyra sat on the floor, hugging her knees, still holding the sandwich as if it was treasure. Daniel sat across from her. "You're safe here." Lyra stared at him for a long time. Then, in her broken voice, she asked, "Why? Help me?" Daniel blinked. The words were simple, but heavy. He thought for a moment, then answered, "Because you deserve better. You're not trash, Lyra. You're not an animal. You're a child. And no child should live like this." Her eyes watered again. She bit her lip, trying not to cry. Slowly, she whispered, "They call me nothing." Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask who they were, but he didn't push. Instead, he leaned forward. "Then I'll call you something. I'll call you Princess." Lyra blinked in surprise. Her lips parted, like she wasn't sure if it was a joke. No one had ever said a word like that to her. "Princess?" she repeated, the word strange in her mouth. Daniel smiled. "Yes, because you are worth more than they say. You are more than scraps. You are more than nothing." For a moment, Lyra's face changed. The fear did not vanish, but under it, something else appeared. Hope. Outside, the wind howled. Daniel checked the door again. He knew the city was dangerous. Someone had surely noticed the girl. But right now, inside this broken workshop, he made a silent promise. He would not let her go back to that life. He sat near her, watching her eat the last bite of the sandwich slowly, carefully, as if she wanted to make it last forever. When she finished, she curled up and leaned against the wall. Her eyes grew heavy, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to sleep. Daniel stayed awake, guarding her. His hand rested near his weapon, his eyes on the shadows. He thought about her name, Lyra, about her scars, about the way the crowd looked at her like garbage, and about the way she said people called her nothing. Something was wrong here. She was not just a homeless child. He could feel it. Her presence was too strange, too important. He looked at her sleeping face, peaceful now. In the soft light, her blue skin seemed to glow. She looked fragile, but also powerful in a way he could not yet understand. Daniel whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "I'll protect you, no matter what comes." And with that, a bond was made, silent, unbreakable. What Daniel did not know was that outside, in the dark corners of the city, others were already searching for her. They did not call her Lyra. They did not call her nothing. They called her something far more dangerous. Morning came slowly in the broken city. The neon lights dimmed and the sky above was gray with smoke. Daniel had not slept. He sat against the wall of the old workshop, watching the little alien girl. Lyra still slept curled up on the floor, her arms wrapped around herself. In the quiet, she looked even smaller, even weaker. But there was something strange about her. Even in sleep, her skin glowed faintly, like starlight trapped under her skin. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. He had seen many strange things in his life. Wars on alien worlds, machines that could cut through steel like paper. But he had never seen a child like this. When Lyra finally opened her eyes, she blinked at him as if checking if he was still there. When she saw him, she relaxed a little. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't afraid either. That was progress. Daniel gave her a piece of dried fruit from his pack. She ate slowly, carefully, like food was a gift too precious to waste. "Lyra," Daniel said softly, "where is your family?" She looked down, her lips pressed tight. For a moment, Daniel thought she would not answer. But then, in her broken words, she whispered, "Gone. All gone." Daniel's chest tightened. He had heard that answer before. In too many places. War always left children with no one, but deep inside he felt her story was not so simple. Later that day, Daniel left the workshop with Lyra close beside him. They moved carefully through the narrow streets, staying in the shadows. Daniel knew he had to find a safer place. Maybe even a ship to leave this planet. But the city was alive with whispers. At a market stall, Daniel stopped to buy water. The vendor, a wrinkled alien with green scales, glanced at Lyra and frowned. "You keep dangerous company, human," the vendor muttered. Daniel stiffened. "What do you mean?" The alien leaned closer, his voice low. "Some say the lost bloodline still lives. A child of the royal house hiding in the gutters. Most think it's a lie, but..." His eyes flicked to Lyra. "She looks too much like them." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Them who?" The vendor's eyes darted around nervously. "The old rulers. The dynasty that fell when the warlords came. They say one child escaped. A princess. Worth a fortune. Worth an empire." Daniel froze. He looked at Lyra. She stood quietly, her small hands gripping his jacket, her wide eyes watching the crowd. Princess. The word echoed in his mind. He had called her that last night, only to give her hope. But what if it was true? He handed the vendor his money quickly and left without another word. As they walked, Daniel noticed more eyes on them. Shadows moving. Whispers spreading. People were beginning to notice the girl. He pulled her into a side alley. "Lyra," he said firmly. "Who are you really?" She looked at him confused. Then slowly she whispered, They said, I am nothing, but once I was called Light. Daniel knelt so his eyes met hers. Light? She nodded. Her small voice trembled. My mother called me Starlight. Then they came, fire, screams. She said, run. I ran. Never saw her again. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. She had learned to hold it inside. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. Lyra, listen to me. You're not nothing. If what they say is true, you're more important than anyone knows. That's why people are after you. Lyra looked at him with fear. They will kill me. Daniel shook his head. Not while I'm here. I promised you, remember? For the first time, she gave the smallest nod. A silent trust. That evening, they hid in a tavern on the edge of the city. The air smelled of smoke and strong drink. Aliens filled the tables, speaking in low voices. Daniel kept Lyra close, making sure no one touched her. At a nearby table, two rough-looking aliens whispered. Daniel caught their words. The bounty's real. Anyone who finds the princess will be paid in gold and power. Last seen in the lower markets. Small, blue skin, white hair. Daniel's blood ran cold. He pulled his hood lower and wrapped his arm around Lyra. The aliens continued. The warlords want her alive. Others want her dead. But one thing is sure. Whoever has her controls the future. Daniel stood quickly, leading Lyra out before they could hear more. On the street outside, the night air felt heavy. Lyra tugged his sleeve. Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking. They are looking for me. Daniel looked down at her. She was shaking, fear filling her small body. He placed both hands on her shoulders and spoke firmly. Listen to me, Lyra. I don't care if you're a princess or just a child. You're not alone anymore. I will protect you. Her wide eyes searched his face, trying to see if he meant it. And in that moment she believed him. But in the shadows of the street, figures watched them, eyes glowing, weapons hidden under cloaks. The hunt had already begun, and Lyra was no longer invisible. The night air was sharp and heavy with smoke. Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra's hand as they moved quickly through the crowded street. He could feel it, eyes watching, steps following. The whispers of bounty hunters were no longer whispers. They were here. Lyra stumbled beside him, her bare feet hitting the cold ground. She looked up at him with fear in her glowing eyes. They are coming, she whispered. Daniel didn't need her warning. He had been a soldier long enough to know when danger was close. The crowd behind them shifted unnaturally. A group of cloaked figures moved through the market, pushing others aside. Stay with me, Daniel said firmly. He pulled her into a narrow alley. The smell of rust and oil filled the air. Broken lights flickered above them, casting shadows across the walls. For a moment it seemed they had lost their pursuers, but then a loud hiss echoed from behind. Figures stepped into the alley, blocking the way out. Alien mercenaries. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Weapons shimmered in their hands. Blades that buzzed with energy. Lyra gasped and hid behind Daniel. The leader of the group, a tall creature with gray skin and sharp teeth, sneered. Well, well. The human thinks he can hide the girl. Daniel's hand rested on his weapon, but his voice was calm. She's just a child. The mercenary laughed, a cruel sound. She is no child. She is the key, and keys belong to those who can use them. Lyra pressed closer against Daniel, trembling. He looked down at her and whispered, "Run when I say." The mercenary stepped forward. Daniel didn't wait. He threw a piece of scrap metal from the ground, hitting the broken light above. Sparks rained down, blinding the mercenaries for a moment. "Run!" Daniel shouted. Lyra darted forward, her small feet fast on the stone ground. Daniel followed, pushing past the mercenaries. One swung his blade, but Daniel blocked with his arm guard and shoved him into the wall. Another lunged, but Daniel's fist struck his jaw, sending him crashing to the ground. They burst out of the alley into the open street. The market crowd screamed as the fight spilled out, but Daniel and Lyra pushed through. The girl's hand clung to his, her breath sharp with fear. "Faster," Daniel urged. The city became a maze. Neon lights blurred as they ran through winding alleys and broken bridges. Behind them, the mercenaries gave chase, their voices shouting in alien tongues. Lyra's legs began to weaken. Daniel scooped her into his arms and kept running. He could feel her heartbeat racing against his chest. They turned a corner and reached a wide street lined with glowing signs. Daniel spotted a hover tram preparing to depart. Without thinking, he sprinted forward and leapt onto the back platform, pulling Lyra with him. The tram lifted off the tracks, gliding above the city. Daniel crouched low, holding the girl close. For a moment he thought they had escaped, but then across the rooftops, shadows moved. The mercenaries had speeders. "Hold on," Daniel muttered. Lyra buried her face against him, clutching his jacket. The speeders roared closer, their engines loud against the night. Energy bolts flew past, sparking against the tram. Passengers screamed, ducking for cover. Daniel shielded Lyra with his body. His soldier instincts returned. He grabbed the side rail and swung himself upward, climbing to the roof of the tram. From there, he could see the mercenaries closing in. One aimed a blaster directly at him, but before the shot fired, something strange happened. The tram lights flickered. The street lamps below dimmed. And for a heartbeat, everything went dark. Then, in the center of the tram, Lyra's skin glowed brighter, like a star breaking through the night. The mercenaries hesitated. Their speeders wobbled. The air itself seemed to tremble. Daniel looked down at her in shock. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Her small hands glowed faintly as she clutched his arm. She looked scared, but her power flowed anyway. The tram's engines surged with sudden strength, pulling them farther ahead, away from the hunters. The mercenaries shouted in panic. One of their speeders sparked and spun out of control, crashing into a rooftop. Daniel's heart pounded. She was more than a lost princess. She was something far greater. When the tram finally slowed near the city's edge, Daniel carried Lyra off and into another alley. His arms ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop until they were hidden in the dark once more. He set her down carefully. She was breathing fast, her face pale, her glow fading. "You saved us," Daniel said, staring at her in disbelief. Lyra shook her head weakly. "I don't know how." Daniel knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders gently. "Listen to me, Lyra. You have something inside you, something powerful. That's why they're after you. But it also means you're stronger than you think." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want power. I just want safe." Daniel's voice softened. "And you will be. I promise." But even as he said the words, he knew the truth. The chase was only beginning. The mercenaries would not stop. And the secret inside this little girl was bigger than either of them understood. From the rooftops above, another set of eyes watched them. Silent. Waiting. Not all hunters had revealed themselves yet. The storm was still coming. The city was quiet at its edge, far from the crowded markets. Broken towers leaned against one another like bones of some long-dead giant. Daniel carried Lyra through the ruins, his boots crunching on stone and dust. She was weak. Her glow from the tram had faded, and now she looked like a small, tired child again. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breath shallow. Daniel found shelter inside an abandoned building, once a storage house. The walls were cracked, the roof half broken, but it would hide them for the night. He set Lyra down gently on a piece of cloth from his pack. She looked up at him, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "They won't stop," she whispered. Daniel brushed the dust from her hair. "No, they won't, but neither will I." He turned away, checking his supplies. That's when he noticed the wound on his arm. Back in the alley fight, one of the mercenary blades had cut through his guard. Now the skin was split, bleeding. Slowly, he tied a cloth around it, but the pain burned deep. Lyra noticed. She sat up, her small hands trembling as she reached for him. "You hurt," she said softly. "It's nothing," Daniel replied, forcing a smile. "I've had worse." But she didn't look convinced. Slowly, she crawled closer. She placed her tiny blue hand over the wound. Daniel almost pulled away, but then something happened. A warmth spread through his arm. Not heat, not fire, something softer, deeper. Light shimmered faintly under her skin, flowing from her hand into him. The pain in his arm faded. The bleeding stopped. Daniel's eyes widened. He pulled the cloth away and stared. The cut was gone. Completely gone. Not even a scar. He looked at Lyra in shock. How did you do that?" Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. She looked frightened by her own action. "I don't know," she whispered. "It just happens." Daniel stared at her glowing hands. A lost princess was one thing, but this? This was something far beyond bloodlines and crowns. Later, as the night grew darker, Lyra sat close to him. She was quiet, but her eyes searched his face as if she wanted to know if he was angry. "I am different," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "Different doesn't mean bad." "They called me cursed," she whispered, hugging her knees. "Said I was dangerous." Daniel's voice was firm. "They're wrong. You saved me. You saved both of us. That's not a curse. That's a gift." Lyra blinked at him, as if his words were something she had never heard before. Slowly, a small spark of relief crossed her face. Daniel leaned back against the wall. His mind raced. Healing wounds. Power over machines and light. If the rumors were true, that she was a princess of a fallen dynasty, then maybe her bloodline carried something ancient, something worth killing for, and worth protecting at all costs. Suddenly, a noise outside snapped him back to alert. Voices. The sound of boots against stone. Daniel quickly dimmed the lamp and pulled Lyra behind him. Through a crack in the wall, he saw them, 2 mercenaries searching the ruins holding scanning devices. "They're close," one muttered. Lyra gripped Daniel's arm, fear shaking her small body. Daniel whispered to her, "Stay quiet." The mercenaries moved closer, their scanners beeping. Daniel's hand hovered near his weapon. He could take 2, maybe, but if they called for more, it would be over. Then Lyra did something he didn't expect. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved, though no sound came. Suddenly, the scanners outside flickered and died. Sparks shot from the devices and the mercenaries cursed, smacking them against their arms. "Useless junk," one growled. "Let's check the next sector." They moved away, their footsteps fading. Daniel looked at Lyra, stunned. "Did you do that?" She opened her eyes slowly. They glowed faintly. She nodded once, her face pale. Daniel exhaled. He shook his head in disbelief. "You're more than just a lost child, Lyra. You're something else." Her small voice broke the silence. "If they find me, they will use me. Or kill me." Daniel crouched, so his eyes met hers. His voice was steady, strong. "Listen. To me. I don't care if you're a princess, a healer, or something the galaxy doesn't even have a name for. You are Lyra. And I swore to protect you. That promise doesn't change." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time she didn't look away. She believed him. That night, Daniel sat awake, his weapon ready, his mind turning. The more he learned about her, the more he understood the danger. She wasn't just a child caught in war. She was the reason war could begin, or end. Outside, the city stirred. Word of the princess was spreading faster. Hunters would come in greater numbers. Daniel glanced at Lyra, asleep again, her small body curled on the cloth, her faint glow lighting the room. She looked peaceful, innocent. But Daniel knew the truth. She was no ordinary girl. She was hope, wrapped in fragile skin, and if the galaxy wanted to take her, it would have to go through him first. The ruins shook with heavy footsteps. Daniel woke instantly, his hand gripping his weapon. Lyra stirred, her glowing eyes opening wide. "They've found us," Daniel whispered. Outside, voices grew louder, mercenaries more than before. The sound of metal boots scraped against stone. Energy weapons hummed as they powered up. Daniel moved fast. He pulled Lyra to her feet. "Stay behind me. Don't move unless I tell you." Her small hands clutched his sleeve. "Daniel, too many." He forced a smile. "Then we'll just have to teach them not to count." The old storage house doors exploded inward. Dust filled the air as 5 mercenaries stormed in, weapons raised. Their gray skin gleamed under neon armor. The leader sneered. "There she is," he growled. "The little star-born, worth more than a planet." Daniel stepped forward, blocking their view of Lyra. "You'll have to go through me." The mercenaries laughed. One aimed his blaster and fired. Daniel ducked, pulling Lyra down. The energy bolt smashed into the wall, showering. "Sparks, run!" Daniel shouted. They dashed through the side passage. The mercenaries chased, their boots pounding like drums. Daniel turned and fired his pistol, striking one in the chest. The alien fell, armor sparking, but more came from the shadows. Lyra's breath grew sharp. "Daniel, more outside." He pushed her toward the stairs. They climbed to the roof, the broken tiles cracking beneath them. The city stretched far below, lights glowing like fireflies. But there was no time to look. Mercenaries surrounded them. Speeders hovered at the edge of the roof, blocking escape. Daniel stood tall, his weapon raised, but he knew the truth. There were too many. The leader stepped forward, blade in hand. His eyes gleamed with hunger. "Give us the girl, human. You don't know what she is." Daniel's voice was firm. "I don't care what she is. She's under my protection," the mercenary growled. "Then you die with her." They rushed forward. Daniel fought hard, his soldier training alive in every move. He fired his pistol, struck with his fists, kicked one enemy off the roof. But another slashed his side with a blade. He stumbled, blood soaking his shirt. Lyra screamed his name. She tried to reach him, but 2 mercenaries grabbed her arms. She struggled, her small body thrashing, but she was too weak. Daniel's vision blurred. He fell to one knee. The leader raised his blade high, ready to strike the final blow. And then, everything stopped. The air shimmered. The rooftop lights flickered. A hum rose, deep and powerful, like the sound of a star awakening. Lyra's eyes blazed with light. Her entire body glowed, brighter and brighter, until the mercenaries stumbled back, shielding their faces. "Let her go," Daniel shouted, his voice raw. The mercenaries tried to hold her, but their armor sparked under her touch. Their weapons shorted out, falling dead in their hands. The leader's blade hummed weakly, then shattered into pieces. Lyra floated a few inches above the ground. Her hair whipped around her face as pure light poured from her skin. Tears streamed from her glowing eyes as she cried out, not in words but in a sound that shook the air. A wave of energy burst outward. The mercenaries were thrown back like leaves in a storm. Speeders spun out of control, crashing into nearby buildings. The rooftop cracked beneath the force, but Daniel shielded his eyes and held his ground. When the light finally faded, silence fell. Smoke drifted across the ruined roof. The mercenaries lay scattered, unconscious or fleeing. The leader was gone. Lyra collapsed to the ground, her glow fading. Daniel rushed forward, catching her before she hit the stone. Her body was small and, trembling, her breath shallow. He held her close. "Lyra, are you all right?" She looked up at him weakly. "I didn't mean to." Daniel shook his head. "You saved us. Don't be afraid of what you are." Her eyes filled with tears. "They will come again, stronger." Daniel brushed the dust from her hair. "Then we'll be ready. Together." He looked out over the ruined city. For the first time, he understood what the mercenaries had said. Lyra wasn't just valuable because of her bloodline. She was dangerous because of her power. a power that could destroy armies or heal worlds, and everyone in the galaxy would want her. Daniel clenched his fist. He was only one man, but he had made a promise, and promises to him were stronger than armies. He looked down at the fragile girl in his arms. No matter who comes, Lyra, they'll have to go through me first. She closed her eyes, leaning against him. Despite the chaos, despite the fear, she felt safe. For the first time in her life, she believed someone's words. Far away in the highest tower of the city, a shadowy figure watched through a glowing screen. He had seen the light. He had seen the power. She lives, the figure whispered, and the war begins again. The city slept uneasily after the battle. Smoke still rose from the ruined rooftops where Lyra's power had struck. Mercenaries whispered in fear. Some fled, others hid, but none dared return to face the girl of light. Daniel carried Lyra through the dark streets. Her body was weak, her glow dim, but she clung to him as if he was the only thing keeping her alive. In truth, maybe he was. They found an old tower at the edge of the city, broken and forgotten. Daniel climbed the cracked stairs until they reached the top floor. There, through shattered windows, they could see the endless stars. He set her down, carefully. She curled up, shivering, though the night was warm. Daniel covered her with his jacket. For a long while they sat in silence. The only sound was the wind howling through the broken walls. Then Lyra spoke, her voice small. "Why do you stay?" she asked. Daniel turned his head. "What do you mean?" "You could leave," she whispered. "The hunters want me, not you. If you let me go, you'd be safe." Daniel leaned closer. His eyes were steady, his voice firm. "I made you a promise. You're not nothing, Lyra. You're not cursed. You're not just a prize to be hunted. To me, you are hope, and hope is worth fighting for." Lyra blinked, tears forming in her glowing eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that. All her life, she had been called weak, worthless, dangerous. Now this human saw something different, something beautiful. Slowly she whispered, "You see me like princess." Daniel smiled softly. "No, Lyra, I see you as more than that. You're family now." The stars outside glimmered. Lyra looked at them with wonder, her eyes reflecting their light. "I used to dream," she said, "when I was alone. I dreamed someone would come, someone who didn't see me as nothing." Daniel rested a hand on her shoulder. "Dreams have a funny way of finding us. Maybe you were dreaming of me. Maybe I was dreaming of you." She gave the faintest smile, fragile but real. For the first time since Daniel had found her, Lyra leaned against him without fear. She closed her eyes, letting herself rest in safety. But safety was an illusion. Far below, the city stirred. The mercenaries had failed, but others were already preparing. News of the girl's power was spreading beyond the planet. Across distant stars, powerful factions were listening. Some wanted to capture her, others wanted her dead, and some wanted to use her to rule again. Daniel knew this peace would not last. He watched the horizon, where the first light of dawn touched the smoky sky. His body ached, his wounds throbbed, but his spirit was iron. He thought about his past, the wars he had fought, the soldiers he had buried, the promises he had broken. Saving Lyra was more than survival. It was redemption. He tightened his grip on his weapon and whispered to himself, "They won't take her. Not while I breathe." Lyra stirred, her small hand clutching his arm even in sleep. Her glow brightened faintly, soft and pure, like the morning star. Daniel looked down at her and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, this fragile child could change everything. Hours later, Lyra opened her eyes again. She looked stronger now, the rest giving her back a little energy. She stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the rising sun. "Daniel," she whispered, "it's beautiful." He stepped beside her. Yes, a new day. Lyra's small face was serious. But more will come. I can feel it. They won't stop. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we won't stop either. We'll keep moving. We'll keep fighting. And one day, we'll show them you are not their weapon. You are their light. Her eyes shone, and for the first time she believed it. But far away, in the shadows of another world, a council gathered. Holograms flickered in a dark chamber. Leaders of alien factions watched the images of Lyra's power on the screens. She lives, one voice hissed. She must be captured, another growled. No, a third voice thundered. She must be destroyed, or she will rise, and the galaxy will kneel before her. The council's decision was clear. War would come. Back in the ruined tower, Daniel and Lyra stood together at the window. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in fire. Lyra's small hand slipped into his. She whispered, almost like a prayer. As long as you are here, I am not afraid. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then remember this. Whatever happens, you are not alone. The two stood side by side, watching the dawn. The light of a new day touched them both. But in the distance, storm clouds gathered, and this was only the beginning.